what a work beat is, it's a formula. You walk in, you do something, and then you stop and you give yourself a win. So I call that in, do, win. And the work beat is you holding your focus on something for an agreed upon period of time that you defined so you can get a small win. So the important thing here is a completion cycle that I held my agreement with myself to hold my focus for this amount of time, and I'm going to give myself a win. When you give yourself a win, your confidence increases. When you enter in a work beat, you create momentum. And when you know how to create momentum and you know how to hold your focus for a period of time and your confidence increases over time, you've got a very strong behavior that you can use that framework, put a lot of interesting practices in it.
On this episode of the Pro Guide, we have Mike Williams, former CEO of the David Allen Company and head of Doing to Done. Today's episode of the Pro Guide is brought to you by Small Pond Productions, the producers of this podcast. If you're looking to boost your brand's voice with professional end-to-end podcast production, whether it's an interview show or telling stories with audio, we walk you through every step of the process to make you sound great. Head to our website and download the free Podcasting Made Simple guide, 8 critical things you need to know before launching your brand's podcast. It's all available at smallpond.productions. Well, welcome everybody to this episode of the Pro Guide. My name is Andrew J. Mason, and I am so excited to be hanging out with you today. We're thrilled because we have Mike Williams in the house with us. Mike was, for many years, the CEO of the David Allen Company, and now he has written his own book and is teaching people his method called Doing to Done, Productivity Made Simple, illustrated for busy people like us, and it is indeed illustrated and awesome. And super grateful to be hanging out with you, Mike, and glean some of your insights and wisdom, as I always feel like every time I hang out with you, it's an enriching time, and I'm just so grateful to share that with everybody here today. Thank you for joining us.
Andrew, always a pleasure to hang with you. I'm so happy I'm here and so happy to be with you.
Well, Mike, one of the things I love the most from the get-go about the book is the subtitle, Illustrated for Busy People Like Us. And if you're living a fast-paced life and you see that subtitle, you get it. You know, we're in a world of Instagram clips and TikTok videos where things last 6 seconds or 30 seconds long, and that's all the attention span we have to give. And this kind of gets to the heart of how to have some actionable increases in your productivity levels as quickly as possible. Tell us about the journey. How did you get here and writing this book?
So if I go back to kind of my origin story with productivity, you might understand it and appreciate it. So I'll dial back to when I was just a kind of a beginning dad. You know, I had an 8-year-old, I had a 4-year-old. I was working at General Electric at the time and rising in my career. I just got promoted to the edge of my competency. So, you know, a stretch role. And my in-laws were staying with us in Burlington, Vermont at the time because my father-in-law was getting medical treatment at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center, and they flew up from Argentina where they were living. So we had my in-laws staying with us for like 6 months. I had 2 small kids, just got promoted, coaching rec sports, and somehow my wife and I found 2 hours on a Friday night to go out on a date night. And we arrive in the restaurant. She looked beautiful. We sit down, order 2 glasses of wine, and I look across the table at Ariana, and she's gorgeous. And it's a beautiful date night. And for the life of me, I cannot pay attention to her because I'm thinking about emails I forgot to send that week, something that somebody said to me in a meeting that kind of made me mad. I hadn't resolved it, and all this other stuff. So total overwhelm. And I was just sad, really just sad in the moment because I couldn't pay attention to Ariana. And I realized, to make a long story short, I realized in that moment that I didn't have the tools to manage this new level of complexity. And, prior to, this was a line of demarcation because prior to that moment, I could work more hours, I could drink more coffee, I could work on the weekends and still hold all the agreements that I had with myself and others in my life. But this was the end of that strategy. I needed a different way to work. So that led me on a search of how do I hold all this complexity and continue to grow in it and feel good about my life and sleep better and stop grinding my teeth and all that kind of good stuff. So, I studied Peter Drucker, I studied Dr. Stephen Covey, and then this book recently came out called Getting Things Done by David Allen. So I read that, and that one really kind of tied a lot of pieces together for me. And so that led me on a journey. I started a blog. Make a long story short, I became the CEO of the David Allen Company, and then during that period of time, I got to train and coach a lot of different people, and it was very episodic training, so in and out kind of training. And then after the David Allen Company, I went to Zappos and worked for the CEO there, Tony Hsieh, and I was the enterprise productivity architect for Zappos. So there is where I get to the answer to your question, because there is where I got to work with a group of, over 1,000 people over a 5-year period. And I got to see out of like the whole inventory of tools that I had to help people with productivity, I got to see what really worked. And what really worked was when I sat down with a person, I would draw a picture of a concept, and then I would explain it to them. We would practice for a period of time, and then I'd come back and ask them how it went. And so that visual piece plus that, let's run a short experiment to see how this works for you, to see if your brain trusts it, led me on this wonderful journey working with a lot of different people to really realize that, wow, there's only about 20% of the tools in my toolbox that produce 80% of the value. And when I partner them with pictures, people really get it. So that became the foundation of the idea for Doing to Done. And that's where I really discovered that illustrated for busy people like us was a quick way to get information and a quick way to get it out. Now, let me wrap back Seth Godin into this. Because if I rewind just in a little bit of time, when I was at the David Allen Company, I helped David write a book called Getting Things Done for Teens. And in that book was the first time I had the opportunity to express my drawing plus simple, straightforward language. And I worked on that with David and another gentleman, Mark Wallace. We published it. And when we published it, adults really liked the book. They found it simple, straightforward, and very helpful to them. So that was in the back of my mind. And then while I was at Zappos, I took Seth Godin's Alt MBA class.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which was remarkable through his business called Akimbo at the time. And that's where, who's it for, what's it for? And he's got the hallmark phrase is for people like us. So that was this piece. So if I just said illustrated for busy people like us, I thought I'd get people who like rich illustrated books to help explain concepts, and the byline of the subtitle is Productivity Made Simple. So I'm hoping that those words combined help people understand that it's a straightforward book that gives you tips, that has beautiful artwork, and in the art plus the straightforward language is 1 + 1 = 52. It's more than what's on the page energetically and everything. And the person who did the illustrations, Christine Yan, we met day one, learning group one in the Alt MBA program. So it was almost like the universe was propelling me to find all of the dots and connect them to get this book out in the universe. So illustrated for busy people like us. So from top all the way down to the bottom, doing to done, that's what we're trying to do as individuals. Productivity made simple. That's the promise of the book. Illustrated for busy people like us. It's for people who want the information presented to them in that format. It is simple, it is visual, and it is fun. And most of the books in the space are, complex, wordy, and boring. So I wanted to be the antidote to that. And that's no fault of the books their own. They're in the publishing industry that kind of demands that. So it requires that they add a lot more stuff in the book that's probably not needed. So yes, that is the backstory, soup to nuts, of doing to done.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate the deep dive there about how this whole book came to be. Talk to us about, for that person that is just like, I am in trouble. I've got more to do than I know how to do. I've got more in my head, and I just don't know how to kind of get those quick wins in productivity. There's stuff in this book that I've seen that I haven't seen anywhere else. It's truly unique concepts here. Do you mind sharing or divulging one or two just quick wins? Hey, if you need to get out of pain and into that space where your head's more clear, try this.
Yeah, good question. So that person, you and me and the listeners, the first part of the book just helps us recognize that we're living in what I call a current reality. So whatever you're experiencing now, in the moment, today, whatever's on your mind, that is a current reality. And it's also a beautiful constraint. So your current reality is always a beautiful constraint. And then there's this persistent promise. And the persistent promise is this. If you take one step forward, you're moving into what I call fresh start territory. And it's the promise that no matter what happened, a moment before, a day before, a week before, a month before, all the years before, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And you can make a step forward into fresh start territory. And that's like the biggest premise of the book is how can I help you make the first step toward something that is meaningful, important, and aligned with where you want to go in life. So that little sentence is packed full of stuff on its own. So I help you unpack it all. It's like you've got this, big old backpack of stuff that's weighing you down, and we have to spill it all out on the floor, kind of analyze what it is and put the pieces back together in a way where you can see the whole, you can see a system, and you can make a decision on how you want to move towards that fresh start territory. So the first part of the book answers the question, how can the current me help the future me become the best me? That is the design of the book. How can the current me help the future me become the best me? And as we work through the book and I unpack the different tools to put in your leadership toolbox, then we help you answer the question, do I feel appropriately engaged in all the roles in my life? And, you'll have yes, no, like that night with Ariana on date night, I did not feel engaged in my role as a husband on a romantic date night with my wife. Something was taking me out of the moment. So the book is designed to create moments where you can be in the moment and have that moment be aligned to something that's, important to you, and you can move into fresh start territory. And the big why behind the book, why did I write a book like this, is because my goal is to help people experience more joy and suffer less. So the book is just full of tools to help you deconstruct chaos and turn it into clarity. And then with that clarity, now make a better informed choice of what you might want to do in the coming moment, or set the future you up for success. So that's kind of like the meta framing of the book, Andrew. So, but I'm happy to jump into any particular details about the book or anything that caught your attention.
Mike, this is so good. Talk to me about the motivation behind this book. You mentioned more joy and suffering less. Is the reason behind the book really that, or is there something kind of more in the practical level as to like what motivated you to want to kind of create this? Where does that passion, that desire to see more joy and less suffering come from for you?
Yeah. So years ago, I was just like working on me, after that date night set me on a journey. So one of the things that I started doing was really separating my life into the major roles that I hold. And in the book, that's called the Role Clarity Map, we help people separate out all their roles. But the very first role in your Role Clarity Map is what I call an anchor role. It represents the me space, kind of like your mind, body, and spirit. And part of that journey as you fill out the map is answering the question, what is my purpose as me? And then it goes on, like, what's my purpose as a husband? What's my purpose as a dad? And you can fill out all your different purposes for all your different roles. But that first role is really a special role. So it took me like 5 years to come up with that phrase, Yeah. And here's my purpose: to channel energy towards positive outcomes so people can experience more joy and suffer less. Yeah. And the image that I have for this, I actually have a drawing, and it's of two people, me and another person. And in this image, I have this yellow ball of energy, channeling energy towards a positive outcome. And I'm reaching out towards the other person with my hands, making an offering. And they have their hands underneath it, but there's a little gap, because you can offer something to the world, but you can never, ever make people take it. They have to choose to take it. And I recognized as I worked through that purpose and worked through that moment that my job is to put the energy out in the world that people can consider for their highest use, whatever that may be. So I can never force people to take it, but in my mind's eye, I picture me as a person kind of planting seeds in the universe. Some will grow, some won't. So this book is like a packet of seeds. And some ideas for you will grow today because the conditions are right. Some will grow a little later because depending on how you enter this book, you may need some time to live with it. You may need some experience with it before you realize the value of the Role Clarity Map or the Project Clarity Map that's in the book and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's the backdrop, or that is the promise of, I feel I'm called to put these seeds out in the universe, to nurture them within people, and to help people find their own internal wisdom. Yeah. And that's another kind of goal of this book. Is it's not me telling you what to do. It's more of a discovery book that the wisdom was already within you. And I just ask some questions so you can see it in front of you and follow it to where it's leading. I don't know where that is. Everybody's got their own beautiful life that's unfolding and being unpacked. But that's the energy that I put into the book.
I love the why behind this book in that horizontal space. Like, collectively, as I'm looking around, this is the wide impact that I want to make. One of the new bits of information that I had seen in this space addresses more the vertical space of the Project Clarity Map that you had created. Really helpful for orienting yourself. And if you would, I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about the details of what the Project Clarity Map is for you and how that might help somebody in their day-to-day roles.
Yeah. So what I just described is prior is applicable to what I would call the me space as an individual. And then there's also this we space that we experience when we try to be productive with others. So if you think of all the intersections you have with life, intersections with your spouse, intersection with your boss, intersection with colleagues. So Doing to Done works on both the me space and helps you participate and be a leader in the we space. So let's take the Project Clarity Map from a business context perspective. So context. So we have in the book, we have a doing statement, which is you're the superhero on a journey. So there's an action that you're taking. So my minimum viable product for you is to clarify one next action you can take toward an outcome that you're trying to achieve or an open loop that you're trying to close. And we call that the done statement. Okay. So that's the finish line. So what's the finish line look like? It could be product shipped, could be tooth repaired. It could be, vacation, completed with family. It could be, 20th wedding anniversary celebrated. It could be strategic plan published. So it can be a wide variety of things. Now, when you have a done statement that needs some more thinking and clarifying, that's when you bring in the Project Clarity Map. So in a business context, it helps you identify what's the purpose of the project, what's your vision of success for the project. And those are probably two of the most important questions on the map. So if you have a project that you're working on and you can define, why am I doing this? What's the purpose? And when I'm done looking back on it, what does success look like? And you can imagine that, a news reporter came in and brought a photographer, the reporter, a videographer, and they're just looking at the wild success of your universe that you just created, like the diorama of your wild success. And if you get those two things really clear, they enchant your project with a story that is so, relevant and real that it draws you forward. It almost sucks you forward into the success of the project. Now, that is extremely important because when you have a clear purpose and vision, now you can ideate and generate ideas. So that is what I call the divergent part of the Project Clarity Map, which is, has a diamond signal. So the top diamond is divergence, so purpose, vision, ideation. And then once you got all those beautiful ideas, then you converge by creating a plan, reviewing the plan to make sure it hits your purpose and vision. And if you answer yes to that, then you say, what's the one next action I need to do to move this plan forward? So if you go through that, you have increased your probability of success for a project considerably. If you are a manager, delegating a project, and you either create that or co-create that with the person that you're delegating to, you've increased your probability of success tremendously. If you're receiving a delegated project and it doesn't come with a purpose or a vision of wild success, it might behoove you to ask those questions. Hey, requester of this project, what's the purpose? What's the vision for wild success? And the reason I ask is I want to make sure what I come up with really hits your needs. So kind of the whole thing put together is an element that helps you increase your probability of success. And when done, once you learn it, it just becomes part of your leadership toolbox. And when you do this over and over again, you kind of increase your return on luck. Because people will be asking, why is that his projects or her projects get done so clean and clearly when others seem to struggle? And it's just, this diamond shape, 3 up top, 3 in the bottom, is just a perfect tool for bringing clarity to something that may be unclear that is in a project, kind of form.
Well, I love. All right, so I have a statement, and then attached to that statement is an actual next question. But the statement is, I love that the project clarity map addresses the expansion that happens in the idea creation process, where it's like world of possibilities. We could do anything, and then also the contraction, where we really do need to land this plane and have a next action show up for us. That I feel like I've never seen in a visual before that succinctly. And I also know that level of simplicity was probably hard won. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, like, when you look at systems, there's always a system within a system. So each of those steps within the project clarity map is, I consider their own unique dojo or studio that you walk into to achieve a very specific outcome. Like writing a purpose statement is an art form. Coming up with a vision of wild success, another studio, is its own art form. Then you turn and you walk into like this other studio, which is, let's unpack it all and get really crazy with ideas. Like, imagine a studio with sticky notes all over the place. Great. But you stay there too long, it gets a little crazy.
That's right.
And you need to walk into the next studio and now let's start organizing the ideas and group them. So the point being is, the whole book is a set of like frameworks and then practices within the frameworks that are predictable and repeatable and something you can gain mastery on over a period of time as you use them over and over again. And they can handle anything. You can run your vacation with your family through it, and you can run the strategic plan through it. It works just the same.
I feel like I need to apologize to the people that are listening to this podcast, because I feel like we approached this podcast in reverse of how the book lays it out. The book, you actually talk about work beats and quick wins first before we get into the project level of stuff. And so for the structure of expansion and contraction that shows up in the project clarity map, there's also a very natural system and a very natural rhythm that shows up when you're just trying to get any basic element of work done. Do you mind talking about work beats a little bit for us?
Yes. So at the beginning of the book, there's some framing that's established. One is, the whole arc of your life. Where are you in current reality? And we have fresh start. So that gives you a macro view of you, the superhero, in the setting of the book. And then I go really micro quite quickly and describe work beats. And what a work beat is, it's a formula. You walk in, you do something, and then you stop and you give yourself a win. So I call that in, do, win. And the work beat is you holding your focus on something for an agreed upon period of time that you defined, so you can get a small win. So the important thing here is a completion cycle, that I held my agreement with myself to hold my focus for this amount of time, and I'm going to give myself a win. When you give yourself a win, your confidence increases. When you enter in a work beat, you create momentum. And when you know how to create momentum, and you know how to hold your focus for a period of time, and your confidence increases over time, you've got a very strong behavior that you can use that framework to put a lot of interesting practices in it. Like, say I want to meditate for a period of time. Say I want to hold my focus with my child for a period of time. Say I need to do a 15-minute sprint to get through my Slack messages for a period of time. Or I need to do a sprint to get through as many email messages as I can. Or I need to spend 15 minutes with the project clarity map to bring more clarity to this project. So the work beats, and it's fun being in a podcast and an audio kind of framework for this analogy, is kind of like Pro Tools. Like when you watch artists put songs together, different parts of the song have different tunes and different tones. So imagine looking at your calendar, but instead of seeing meetings and appointments, you view them as work beats. And then you can insert the tune and tone that you want to bring into that beat. Some will be of longer durations, some will be of shorter durations. But the reframing of that is what people are finding very helpful. And then you can start having fun with it and naming your own beats. I can have a dad beat. I can have a mom beat. I can have, an audio sprint beat. I can have an email beat. I can have a sales beat. I can have a one-on-one beat. So it's just a framing for, here's a tiny dojo that I'm going to walk into for a period of time. I'm going to hold my focus and do the work of that beat. And then I'm going to end. When I end, I'm going to do it with intention so I can give myself a win. And one of the big premises of the book is small wins with big impacts. And the work beat is foundational to that because it's an intentional pause where you give yourself a win because you know the universe is not going to tap you on the back and say, nice job, but you can say that.
Well, I mean, anybody that's been tugged around by their day, I'm sure can feel that pressure, that uneasiness of being like at the effect versus the cause. And it's really sometimes easy to get discouraged about like, man, I'm trying really hard and things aren't happening the way that I want them to. But I really like the idea of attaching it to the practice, not necessarily to the outcome, because when you attach it to the practice, you consistently give yourself permission to feel okay about doing what you're doing, what's in your control, regardless of how the results show up.
Right. Yeah. Because if you stay in practice, you'll do a beat on a project. It doesn't complete the project. But if you continually show up, what I like to say is you create the conditions for something really interesting to emerge. Create the conditions for something to show up and increase your return on luck, because outcomes are an emergent quality of something. You can't do an outcome. You can only do enough things until something emerges, and you might be like, wow. Like, how many times have you had something on your mind, has been on your mind for, months or years, and then you finally take the action to send an email, and poof, the thing got, going or solved, but it's that opportunity was always waiting for you just to put it in a little beat and just send it out to the universe. And then the interesting thing is, when you take one next action, which is a doing statement, which is the core premise of the book, you send a request out to the universe. I've taken this action, and it will send information back to help you determine what the next action is. So in the core of the book is built on 3 questions, basically. And the question number 1 is, what's on your mind? And in the book, we have this beautiful image called the party in the brain. So it's all the thoughts that are jumping around, having relationships with each other, and noise, it's like a big party where the bass is thumping so loud you can't even hear yourself think, all right? We've been there, keeps you up at night, can't focus on my wife because the party's so loud. So recognizing that is number 1. Hey, I've got a party in my brain. Then number 2 is, okay, what's on your mind? Let's name each of these thoughts one at a time for a very short 5-minute beat and just write it down on a piece of paper. So now you're naming, claiming, and writing it down. And when that list starts to emerge on a piece of paper, your brain gets a chance to see the information differently. And they're like, whoa. And you can't stop it because the brain at this point wants to figure out what this stuff is. You move from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. And then that's what I call a brain sweep. So that's like win number 1. And a lot of people's lists, when I start working with them, kind of look like that. It's just a list of the stuff that was on their mind, but it hasn't been, transformed into clear doing and done statements. So that's why win number 2 is transform it. And it's the bedrock of the book. it's like this is where you start creating your fresh start territory, where you answer a series of questions. And in that section of the book, what I really want the reader to get is the question is the coach. I'm not the coach. The question is the coach, and will help you find an answer, enough of an answer so you can take one next action and ping the universe. So you'll end up with the doing statement and done statement. What's doing look like? What's done look like? And then you'll have a whole list there that is a list of the chaos that's been transformed into two clear lists of a doing statement and a done statement. And once you get there, you can really kind of propel your life forward at a new pace than you could before. And it basically becomes a list of all the agreements that you've made with yourself and the agreements that you've made with others, so you can keep your promises and close the agreements, get the win, and continue to advance your life, because each of these, project action couplets is a piece of something that's important to you. So you can move your life forward, move a role forward, move a project forward, move a deal forward, that kind of stuff.
Mike, I so appreciate your time with us. Doing to Done, Productivity Made Simple. One final question too, if I may. You mentioned less suffering, more joy. If you had one thing that you can have show up in the world, your billboard, your 20-minute soapbox, but just one thing that you can have, just people get it, and you wave that magic wand and they understand the concept, or something happens in the world, what would that be for you?
The immediate thing that shows up for me is what I get to witness over and over and over and over and over again, which is, creating a small win and just packaging information for yourself. So you set yourself up to have small, tiny wins over time. So small wins, big impacts would be the statement. And behind that is kind of like the metaphor. Don't get too far in front of your skis, and don't think too far down the road. The book in some respects is an antidote to overthinking and over planning, and just kind of being appropriately in the moment, appropriately in current reality, and appropriately doing your best to take one step to create momentum with love and kindness for yourself, embracing your imperfection, loving it, because it's the juice that makes us us, and this notion of being perfect, it's not out there. We're just trying and learning. And this book just sets up an infinite amount of beautiful learning adventures that you can go on.
Mike, this has been fabulous. I'm super grateful for your time. Again, doingtodone.com. Pick up the book if you haven't checked it out yet. Mike, what are some other ways that people can connect with you and stay in your orbit if they're interested?
Yeah, certainly the website. I offer workshops. I offer coaching. I offer keynote speeches for companies. Offer master training programs for companies as well. And those are some of the ways that you can take this for yourself as an individual, or if you're in a group space, such as a manager for a company or a learning leader within a company. There's different ways to access it there. But if somebody wants to contact me and have a conversation, that's another way, because I always love talking to people, always. Never, ever have I turned anybody down. So you can reach me at mike@doingtodone.com and schedule some time. I'd love to connect with whoever would like to connect.
That's perfect. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It was fun.
And our thanks to all of you for listening. If you're looking for a quick way to make our day, a review in iTunes or subscribing to this podcast would mean the world to us. Our thanks to Small Pond Productions for sponsoring. And this was the ProGuide. Learn from leaders, change your life. See you, everybody.